Welcome to the Jackson Joint, a place where married folks come to let their hair down and have transparent conversations about marriage, love, parenting, and life. We're trying to strengthen the family unit, y'all.
Now, the conversations are real, raw, and honest, but the vibe is always positive and uplifting.
Yes. So step into the Jackson Joint and let's just chat and grow together. And most importantly, share in the good vibes. Let's go. Hey. Welcome back to the Jackson Joint.
We are here.
Yes, we are here. Welcome back. Hopefully you all are having a wonderful time as always. We want to always lead with that because we don't know what kind of day or night or week you all have been having or are having, but we at the Jackson Joint want to just wish you a good day, a well week.
Yes.
And we pray that all things are well. You know, it's a heavy time in the world.
It is.
Well, I wouldn't say it's a heavy time in the world, but there's just always some heavy things, going on. But I feel like just as much darkness as there is, that there is light.
Yes.
Some friends and I, we went out to lunch recently and we talked about that, just how with the pandemic, it seemed like that 2020 ushered in such darkness.
Yes.
But what I've been so encouraged about, just when in 2022, I saw an uprising of just light and an uprising of even new prophetic voices that you just would not expect to hear it from. So God is raising up, new leaders and a new sound. And when I mean a new sound, I mean his same word, but just coming from different vessels.
Yes.
So I'm seeing a response, to the darkness. And so I'm really, really encouraged by that. And I'm just, especially at this season of my life, I'm always looking for the light in situations because the darkness is so easy. There's no shortage of that. Yeah. But I feel like there's just as much, if not more light than there is darkness, So.
And another thing from the pandemic that I've seen, I think it caused us to really value the people in our lives.
Yes.
So I see people being more mindful and intentional about spending time, showing love, sharing love. So, despite the darkness that, the pandemic brought, it's brought some people closer together. So that's a silver lining. That's a light.
Absolutely.
From that dark moment.
Yeah, it made you value and look at everything differently. And hopefully, people are still in that mode. I know when it was happening, people were like, ooh, when I can gather, I'm going to gather with everybody. I was the one that was, always saying, invite me, knowing I wasn't going to come. But now I'm coming to everything. So hopefully
people hold to that and they weren't just talking.
Now that we're kind of back to it for the most part, people are still valuing and cherishing those moments and those memories that they can make with those with whom they care about.
Yes, definitely. But first, how are you? How are you today?
I'm good. I'm well. I'm well today.
Good.
How are you?
I'm good as well.
Good. So,
today's episode.
Yeah, today's episode. So today we're talking about what I feel like is a really necessary topic. And I feel like it's necessary because I'm just kind of one of those people. I like to highlight what doesn't appear to be the obvious, right? I think that we have things that we know are like overtly right or wrong. Mm-hmm. But I think that as the word says, it's the little foxes, that destroy the vine. So it's the little things that you don't give the attention to that's really wreaking all the havoc.
Yep.
So I'm one of those type of people who I like to highlight what's not being talked about so that we can talk about it.
Let's do it.
Okay.
Let's talk about
it. So that, again, it's just one less thing that's eating away at the fruitfulness of the family, of your family. When I say your, I mean people who are out there who are listening. One less thing that can eat away at the fruitfulness of your family and the wellness of your family and the generations to come.
Yes.
You destroy them on this level so that we don't see them pop back up later. And so with that being said, what I think we should talk about today is the idea of inheriting our parents' trauma or biases. And I think that we do this unknowingly and in many cases very innocently, but it's still well, sometimes it's not innocent. Sometimes it's very much so like, I don't like them and I don't want you to like them. Even though you my child and you 7, I want you to know now that they ain't to be liked.
They ain't our people.
They ain't our people, So sometimes it is very much so done intentionally. But really what's undergirding this episode more than anything is just a call to heal.
Yes.
It's a call for everyone to heal your stuff so that there is nothing for your child to inherit.
That's right.
But before we can even really get to what the overall mission is, let's just kind of deal with what the outcome of not healing is, which is just trauma and biases. Sometimes it's not even trauma. Sometimes it's just the biases that your children can end up inheriting that you have towards certain individuals. And now, in a sense, their innocence is lost as a result of them receiving information or being privy to certain emotions that you may have about a person or a situation way too soon, way before they can really process that themselves. They've decided, well, because mommy doesn't like them or mommy doesn't find them, trustworthy, or mommy doesn't. Now, again, we're not talking about situations where the person is apparently dangerous. We're not talking about that. Your first priority is to protect your children.
Of course.
However, I'm talking about the situations where it's just a misunderstanding between you and the individual, or it may not even be a misunderstanding. It could be very much so that you understand that that person just doesn't like you for no reason, or they're jealous of you, or they're threatened by you, or whatever. But you've now carried that, even though that was that person's problem. You've now carried that, and you've now made this your child's problem by how you talk about the person in front of your child.
Yes.
Or just, even if it's not as blatant as how I talk about them, again, when I'm unhealed, it comes out in ways that I don't
how you
recognize
act around them. And kids are not oblivious. Most kids are perceptive. They're inquisitive, so they're going to ask you, or they're going to ask somebody, so what you may be thinking you hiding is being picked up, even though you're not talking about it.
Yeah. So let's just talk about that quick. Do you want to kick it off, or you want me to kick it off?
You got it. Go ahead.
Okay. So, I'm 41. Mm-hmm. So I've been able to experience a lot of situations, and I've observed a lot of situations. And so I'll just take myself, I have two boys, and I think boys are just different in the sense that they just don't have the type of responses to things that perhaps, maybe daughters would.
Yeah.
But regardless of that, I knew that I did not want how I felt about people to become my boys' problems. And it did not mean that, the offense wasn't real. It didn't really happen. The person wasn't as evil as I thought they were. It was just, in my mind, I don't want them to inherit how I feel about that person, because it's not their problem. And it could be somebody who they may never even meet. You know what I mean? It could be somebody that, they may never even come across this person, but certainly even more so if it is somebody that they may have the potential to come across.
Yeah.
But whether they knew them or not, whether they would ever meet them or not, whether they were around them every day or not, I never wanted how I felt about a person to become my boy's problem, because I knew early on what it would end up doing was, I don't know if I ever processed it like tarnish their innocence. I don't think I ever processed it like that, but I always processed it more from the place of, I want them to have the opportunity to form their own opinion of the individual.
Yeah.
Whether, like I said, because they may meet them one day, or whatever. And I wanted them to have the opportunity to just have a genuine opportunity to have a genuine view or experience with the
Yes.
person that wasn't tarnished by how my mommy feels
Exactly.
about you,
Yeah.
about them. And so I just never wanted that for them. And so for me, I never looked at it like I need to heal because of that. That's a deeper part of
Yeah.
it. I just felt like I just wasn't going to have certain conversations around them.
Yeah.
But I never took it to the next level and said, I need to heal for their sake as well. I mean, yeah, first and foremost for my own sake, but I never really included my children in my need to heal and forgive.
Yeah.
Because it was just, well, I'm just going to move on and I'm just going to just not talk about it in front of them. But I didn't realize how when you carry the venom in your heart still, it's going to come out in other ways.
Yep.
Whether it comes out towards that person or not, you parenting unhealed and full of, I mean, just chock full of unforgiveness, it's going to impact your parenting, whether you want to admit that or see that or not, because it can come out when you're advising or mentoring your child on how to handle the situation.
Yes.
It can just come out in how you talk about people, even if you're not talking about a situation that you personally dealt with in front of your child. You're just talking about people in general.
Yeah.
It's going to impact how you do that. It's going to impact how you frame your advice to how your child should see the world. So sometimes in your attempt to put your child up on game or make your child, street savvy, you can end up making them paranoid and just untrusting of everybody around them. And so then that's going to impact how they can form relationships and friendships because they don't trust nobody.
Exactly. So,
their
concept of interpersonal relationships is tainted at a very young age.
Yeah.
And as they get older, they could potentially struggle, like with friendships and in the workplace, like all of that, because their young minds are at young ages are already being formed. And so their perception or their perspective on things for the future is already defined for them at a young age. So yes, I completely agree.
And like the scripture says, whatsoever a man thinketh in his heart, so is he. So you can think that what I'm not talking about in front of them, so it's no big deal. If it's in your heart, it's you.
Yes.
So it's framing and shaping a lot of what you do, whether you realize it or not. And that's why I said the deeper conversation is the need to heal for your children.
Yes.
But that's a whole conversation and that's a whole thing.
Yeah.
But we first need to just unpack this concept of what it means to preserve your child's innocence.
Yes.
And it's not always about not cursing in front of them. Yeah, they shouldn't be doing that, or we've become acceptable of the idea that, we don't want them watching sexually explicit things or, listening to explicit music or even being around explicit conversations where there's a lot of, profanity or vulgar topics being discussed. We know that, but we never process it like, man, maybe am I robbing my child of their innocence by letting them be privy to a conversation about how I feel about so-and-so? And so-and-so may very much so deserve everything that you're saying. We're not trying to say so-and-so is absolved of any, of any guilt of what they did or did not do, or what they did, should I say. But what we're saying is that when you keep that stuff unchecked, it's so unfair to the child because they end up, like I said, taking that stuff in, and now it's going to frame and shape their view of the world. And unknowingly, you've robbed them of the ability to really freely form their own idea and concept of who they are, what other people or who other people are, and what the world is like.
Yes.
And when we talked about this, preparing for the episode, you mentioned, racism.
Yes.
How racism is a very good example of what we're talking about.
Inheriting biases.
Yeah.
Right. So it's like, I think many, let's just say white people who are, they inherited the perspective and the biases of their parents. They now have an awareness of other races that they wouldn't necessarily have had it not been for, certain things that were said in their presence. And now it's shaped who they are today. And, and that's, so yes, that's a great example of how we see that play out in our society on a day-to-day basis.
Yeah. And so, like I said, so for myself, because I was always very aware and conscious of the fact that I didn't want to expose my children to my thoughts of people who I had a certain opinion about. When it got down to, and I felt like that was enough, but when I got down to the brass tacks of it all, and I realized, like, oh my God, this is also a call for me to heal, because that means that there's something there.
Yeah.
And I wasn't necessarily a person, and I don't want to get too deep into the forgiveness topic, because that's not really what this is about, but just for the sake of making my point, I never invested in forgiveness. I never felt like, I'm going to make it my business to forgive and to heal. I think I just always prided myself on my ability to just move on. And I really could just move on.
Yeah.
And I remember I would talk to people who say, how do you just do that? Like, how do you just move on? I don't know. I just can. I just move forward. I just move on, and I don't need to it doesn't need to be this process. It doesn't need to be this long drawn out thing. And no, I just move on. And I know some people can't detach from people that easily, but I just was able to, and I really was okay. I really was okay. And I'm like, is this bad? Because why are people responding?
Why is it so easy?
Like, why is it so easy? Or because I'm like, y'all act like this is abnormal, but I'm like, I just can, and so. But I then began to realize that whether I can or cannot is really beyond the point. I am still called to forgive. Yes. I have to forgive. And whether I realize it or not, my inability to forgive, I don't even say it was an inability. I just didn't think about it. I just really didn't think about it. But it doesn't mean that I'm not still living under the weight of it, though.
Exactly.
It doesn't mean that it's not still a presence in my life. And one way or the other is going to impact me and potentially what I may or may not say to my children.
Yes.
In a completely unrelated situation.
Exactly.
Because it's in my heart, as the scripture says, whatsoever man thinketh in his heart, so is he.
Yeah.
And so
in an unrelated situation, that forgiveness will stir up.
Yeah.
And it'll impact your actions, your conversation on this thing, because it smells or looks like the other situation. So now you've transferred your issue to your child.
Exactly. Yeah. Unknowingly. And so I'm like, and I think that, it was brought to my attention by the Lord because he sees the effort that I put into, the intentional effort that I put into trying to preserve my children's innocence when it comes to that. But it's like you need to see the unintentional way that the enemy can still be moving in how you, and completely thwarting all of your intentional efforts to maintain your child's innocence. It's like you need to see behind the scenes that the healing that may still need to take place within you, because it can come out in ways that you're completely oblivious to.
Exactly.
And so then I started moving more towards the conversation of forgiveness within myself, because it wasn't like I was just walking around with the idea that I got so much unforgiveness, but it was like once I really started to unpack it, I realized that I did.
Yeah.
And I was like, wow, I have quite a bit, and then I had to deal with it. And I'm grateful that God led me down that path, because I now realize that when I heal, I'm healing more than just me. I'm healing my children and future generations, because that's just one less bias or trauma or negative pattern that will be transferred down to the generations, right? And so in a sense, the buck stops here.
Yes.
And I was really grateful for that. But first and foremost, it's just how it benefits your own life,
Yes,
So
exactly.
even beyond just you as a parent.
Yeah. Exactly.
So have you ever felt like you've had to be mindful of any biases and trying to make sure that you don't pass those down to your sons?
As you were talking, I was trying to think about that. You know, are there, and I'm sure there are, but I want to give that some thoughts so that I can, accurately respond to your question. But I think that, to your point, like this isn't, through this episode, we're not trying to, we know that the healing aspect is a process. So we're not saying that you're going to get that healing necessarily through this episode. But what we want to do is create awareness, because while there are those, as you said earlier, that may be doing this intentionally, I think the far greater majority of us have these tendencies unbeknownst to ourselves, right? We're not realizing that our behavior or the things we say can be impacting our children in this way, right? And we see it play out in different ways. Like, I've witnessed just over time where, if, let's say, the two individuals who are parents are beefing, now, the individuals that have the issue with each other then keep the kids away from each other, right? So, like, little Johnny can't even play with his friend, Billy, because the parents are arguing, and the kids are now just innocent bystanders of of the issue from the parents, and they're wondering, like, why can't I go over Johnny's house? I always go over there, and it's like, no, you just can't go. So so it's because you're not dealing with your stuff now. The child
like,
has to suffer.
Billy.
I miss Billy. So why can't I go over there? And it's like, so then the parent may be, thinking that they keeping the child out of it by not going into what the issue is, but still you're impacting that child's day to day. And it's like you making your issue the child's issue. So it's like, so it plays out in ways,
in a variety
of ways. So that was just one that came to mind, that, we have to be careful. It may not be directly like I'm talking about so-and-so and shaping your perception of that individual, but I'm making my issue your issue by keeping you from your friend because I don't like his mama, and it's like, and that type of stuff happens all the time, so it's like, we have to be even careful, just of ways like that where it may not seem like as big of an impact, but you still have an impact nonetheless.
Yeah, absolutely. And so, and unfortunately, like we always say, there's no handbook or rule book that comes with parenting. And we are constantly growing up with our children. I don't care if you're 57, you're still evolving and you're growing up right along with your children, because the journey is never ending. And that's what I'm learning. And so, yeah, you can try to do as much work on yourself as you feel like it's necessary prior to having children, then that's great. I encourage that. But just always understand that the work is going to continue, because life is going to continue to happen. Yes. People are going to continue to offend you, get on your nerve. And it's going to, life has a way of constantly presenting you with situations that you have to, in some type of way, either heal from or make the conscious decision to not let find a place in your heart, find a place in your mind. It's just, so I think maybe life can get you to the place where if you do your work, where it doesn't even have the opportunity to plant a seed. But unfortunately, those things are going to happen. And so even in addition to that, even within sometimes the home, you'll find situations where kids will inherit the mama's pain that she has towards her husband, or the husband's pain that he has towards his wife.
Yes.
And that's an even bigger, that's an even deeper one. Right there. That's an even deeper one. And that's why, more than anything, the call here is to be introspective and self-aware and to thine own self be true.
Exactly.
And so, because I believe that the more conscious you are of pain or unforgiveness or trauma or biases that you hold for people who are, I don't want to say ancillary to your life, but who are outside of your home,
Yeah.
then the sharper you are with picking it up when it's a person who's closer to you, like your spouse, so that you can heal it quicker, you can deal with it quicker, you can address it so that, again, it doesn't become a problem.
Yeah.
That you pass down to your children.
Yeah, you're so right. I mean, it's that's a very that's an insidious one, right? Like it's the dad, can have an issue with, or let's just use a different example. The mom feels that the husband isn't, doing spontaneous things or treating her, taking her out, but he does a good job of like being there for the kids and always doing stuff for them. So if the mom is not careful, she'll begin to kind of sow seeds into that child, saying stuff like, "Oh, don't have your hopes up. He ain't gonna come through." And it's like, why are you saying that, mommy? But but then because it's what's in her heart that's coming out.
It's what's in her heart.
The Bible says, out of the abundance of the heart, the mouth speaks.
Yeah.
So when that stuff is deep down in you, that stuff is gonna come out if it's unchecked, and you just have to really
and even
be.
If you drunk when you saying
exactly.
it, you still mean it. You definitely meant it in, so you can't say blame it on the alcohol.
Right.
I said what I said.
It's called liquid courage. It gives you the courage to say the things
you
that you
meant
want,
that, Susie.
while you sober.
Right.
So it's just really being. This is about being mindful.
Yeah.
This is about being thoughtful. Not just not to do certain things in front of your children, but thoughtful and intentional about your healing, thoughtful and intentional about dealing with your own issues so that you're not passing those things on to your children. And in this episode, we're talking about generational, stuff and passing stuff down to your children, but we can't overlook the ability for us as adults to pass on our biases to each other, to other adults.
Yeah.
And then that puts something in that person's mind that they can then transfer down to the next generation. So we just have to be careful all the way around that we don't make our issues other people's issues.
You have to guard your conversation.
Guard your conversation.
You have to guard your conversation. And I become so much more mindful of that because I think that, because again, remember I would always say, I can just move on, and I really could, but in the last few years, and this actually is a good thing, I became, again, to the whole to thine own self be true. I became very clear on who I just flat out just did not like. You know what I mean? Like I just don't, and it wasn't before, like it wasn't for just cause. It's just. Because I don't just do that. You know what I mean? Like I'm not one of those people like, I don't know, I just don't like it and I don't know why. It's just some people that you may encounter in life where they're just, their spirit is just bad.
Yeah, I don't jive with that. Yeah.
Their spirit is just bad. And there are very few times when I can actually say, I don't like that person. So when I say that, it is because your spirit is just bad because you're so unhealed and you're so miserable and so traumatized. And so, but the reason why I knew that I was growing and was maturing was because I was able to admit to myself, I do not like this person and this is why, but I'm going to rid myself of that anyway.
Yes. And
it might not mean that because I feel like it's, when people say you deserve me to not like you, well, that doesn't really do anything to them. That's doing something to you. So I don't want to say they deserve me to not like them. It's just, your
feelings are justified. You feel
my feelings are justified.
Yeah.
That's the best. That's the best way to put it. So I knew that regardless of how justified I was, nobody or nothing is worth my life being stifled because I can't get over how much I don't like you.
Yep.
You know what I'm saying? Because I hate you.
Yep.
And so, so that was why I had to say, you know, okay, and not hate. I don't hate anybody, but just how much I may have disliked the person or people or whatever. And so when I really was honest with myself, and because God got me to the place where he was no longer comfortable with me just saying, oh, I just move on. You know, he's like, no, you're gonna have to deal.
Yes.
I want you to sit in this and deal with it. And I felt when my heart started to turn. Not necessarily turn towards the individual, but just turn towards them and seeing them as a broken person. You know what I mean? And it's not that I need to see that you're broken in order to be able to like you or to forgive you, but it's like I'm able to now see you for all of what you are and not just what you did or a crazy thing you said or how bad your spirit is. You know what I mean? I'm able to see the fullness differently because now I'm seeing you how God wants me to see you. And so it was that's so good. Yeah. So it was when I allowed God to do that stuff on me, do that process within me, that I was able to rid myself of things. And remember, I told you, I was like, I'm changing and I don't think I like it. I don't like it.
This is not comfortable.
I like being hard. I like being able to move on and cut people off and dismissive. I like it. I know that she knows that lane real well. I'm like, I don't like it. I feel like I'm softening up and I don't like it. I'm like, I don't like it. And I wasn't just talking. I did not like it.
But God had different plans.
But God was like, well, you gonna like it.
Exactly.
Okay. It's like when your parents say, well, look, you gonna eat it. Okay. And I mean, if you don't want to eat it, then you ain't really hungry.
Exactly.
So it was like, God was telling me like, you're not really hungry for me if you don't want to do this. And he changed my heart. And so it's like, I can't even really, if I try hard enough, I can identify with the old me that used to just, you know, be a track star and just running, you know, and I don't even say running. I was just walking. I mean, smooth moonwalking out of people's life. It wasn't even like I was
sprinting. No.
It was like, no, I'm definitely like just galloping about this boy, you know. So,
but it was so important that you allowed.
But that's one. Let me just wrap this comment up so I don't lose my train of thought. But anyway, God wasn't pleased. That's the point that I was making. And so he healed my heart and he turned my heart. And so now I'm even that much more aware of being that much more vigilant about healing and healing quickly. And so to the original point that I was making this was to say, to your point, was that when we do that, then we're even mindful of conversations we have with adults, because it's like, you know what? I'm not healed enough to have that conversation yet. I have the tendency to fire off at the mouth right now if we start talking about that person or that situation. I'm not healed. That is the level 10 of spiritual maturity right there. Or even emotional maturity, where you can say, you know what? I'm not healed enough to have that conversation because I don't know what I'm going to say. And what I say could potentially taint your impression of them. And I have to care about you enough because I know how you care about me. So I have to care about you enough to not give you that, because I don't want you feeling a way about them because of what they did or said to me. So I'm just going to keep that because I'm not healed enough yet.
I'm not at the right place for that.
That right there. That's growth. That is such a level of self-awareness and emotional intelligence, and checking in with yourself and saying, yeah, I'm not there yet. And that's how we stop the patterns. That's how we stop the cycles. Being honest with where we are. And it's okay. So yeah, I just wanted to make sure I made that point.
But you lay it right into what I was going to say.
I hope I didn't no. go too long on that. But I was just trying to process it as I talked through it.
And it was, like I said, just leading right into what I was saying. It was so important that you allow God to do that work in you, because now you're less likely to communicate to our children, whether directly in conversation or through your body language, by your behavior, how they should look at friendships, right? You know, like having them guarded about different personality types or things based on your experience, and now you've impacted how well they can form friendships, right? So that they don't then become runners. They don't become those that are dismissive, because you could very well could have gone into, look, if you start seeing this type of stuff, run real quick. And it's like, running is not the answer. It's one, let's deal with whatever that thing is. Yeah, you can cause awareness, school them, but being mindful about how it's done so that you're not then recreating your old patterns in them.
And I think it's arrogant to think that our perspective is always right.
Yes,
it could be very much so that your assessment, even though you were involved, it could still very much so be that your takeaway, you're not right. You're not accurate.
Yes.
It's just from your perspective, you were offended. And I think we equate offense with accuracy.
No.
Just because you got hurt does not mean that was the intention. And it doesn't, it could just mean that, again, because you're not healed from something else, this hurt you.
Yes.
So again, you have to check in with yourself. And so I'm just spreading and just all willy-nilly out here just transferring my hurt to my children. And I'm dead wrong.
Based on false
things. And then when you have the conversation, now you realize, oh, I was wrong. But now I didn't already tarnished your name to everybody, including my children. They hate you and don't nobody else like you. And now because of that, my kids can't trust nobody, because I told them, this is what happened to me. So
that's a sensitive area for me.
And that's why I said that's almost
a whole episode.
Y'all, he over here like, he over here having to hold his knees.
That's going to be a future episode.
He has such an aversion to stuff like that.
Yes, but we really need to deal with how to handle offense and the road to forgiveness. And so we're going to have a whole episode on that. We're going to have a whole conversation
about offense. We might have to bring somebody on with that one. Because, for us to claim to be, such hard people and such, don't nothing get to me, we are the most offended people.
Oh, yes.
We love some good old hot offense, but we say, we don't care. And it ain't, you do care.
Yeah.
You do care. And I get it from, because especially like if you grew up like a lot of us in a city like, Chicago or like rough cities and rough areas, you have to be tough. You have to kind of have this shell and this hard exterior. Like, don't nothing get to me, don't nothing bother me. But based off of the vibe check that everybody is failing, you're very offended.
Yes.
You ain't chilling.
Ding, ding, ding.
You ain't took the, what is it, a team of Omarion trying to show us how to chill and just be not offended out here. But y'all wasn't listening to Omarion.
No,
y'all because y'all wasn't listening to Omarion, and you trying to tell y'all how to be out here not offended. But no, I'm just being silly. But anyway, so we see how far and wide this conversation can go. It's not a neat, cute little thing. And understand, we get it.
We get it.
I'm not coming from a standpoint of, something I don't understand. And as you just heard me talk about, I've had to grow through.
And still
is growing through. And even as aware as I was with not having conversations with or around my children, just because certain things were still in my heart, God knew I got to get that out of her heart because it's going to come out unintentionally.
Yes.
And it's going to have the same impact that having a direct conversation about a person with her child would.
Yep.
So that's what I'm saying. I'm constantly on,
we both are.
What is the potter's wheel?
Yes.
And he is constantly refining my heart over and over again and just showing me how much residue had to come out of it. And so that's all we're saying here on the Jackson Joint is that we want to encourage all of you to just sit with yourself for a moment and ask yourself, what are my traumas? What are my biases? And am I knowingly or unintentionally passing this down to my children? How is what's in my heart, how is that informing how I frame or shape my child's view of the world?
Yes.
Ask yourself those questions.
Yeah.
It can only be a benefit.
Yes. And just want to throw this out, and not only your experiences, but think about the things that were passed down to you.
Yes.
Perspective, biases, and opinions that were passed down to you
from your parents.
Then now just by rite of passage pass those things down to your children. So this is a generational thing, and we all at each level need to be mindful.
I feel like we need to come back to this conversation because it's so weighty.
Yeah.
So those of you after you hear it, if you want us to kind of unpack this further, let us know. Where can they reach us to comment or?
We are on social media at the Jackson Joint on both Facebook and Instagram, so you can DM us there. You can email us at info@thejacksonjoint.com.
And you can also submit anything on our website at thejacksonjoint.com.
Yes.
Yeah, so I feel
So
like
we wanna hear from y'all.
it's a heavy topic, but yeah, so we want you guys to heal, be well, and forgive,
Yes.
and just be led by the Lord on what needs to happen next. But just know that whether you realize it or not, your words do have weight, and that's with not even just with other people, with even with what you tell yourself. Your
Yes.
words have weight and they matter. So be mindful of what you're repeating, whether it's in your mind or what you say verbally.
Yes.
All right.
Definitely. Well, until next time.
That's the Jackson joint.
Peace.